next guest is writer, educator, and director of education at the Porch Literary Collective here in Nashville, Yurina Yoshikawa. Yurina just won the inaugural Southern Prize for Literary Arts, and her work has appeared in The Atlantic, NPR, LitHub, the Japan Times, the New Inquiry, to name a few. She's also a gifted musician, playing viola for the Nashville Symphony Orchestra and serving on their board. I'm a little intimidated and really excited to share this conversation with Yurina Yoshikawa. Yurina Yoshikawa, thank you so much for coming over here and spending a little time with me.
Thank you so much for having me. Are we started?
This is it.
This is it? Oh my goodness.
Right
okay,
now.
okay,
you
great.
didn't hear the theme music. We insert that in later.
Okay.
No, I've been really looking forward to talking to you, and I feel like I know you in some small way just from the community of writers in the scene.
I was going to say likewise, you know, even though this is our first sit down kind of conversation. I've met you in different circles, and I know a lot of other artists who's been on this podcast, and I've listened to those. So
and I think that your kids are being instructed on the piano just a few yards away.
That's right.
That's
also. Right.
So
yes,
it's a small world.
Yes,
this community of ours. A lot of stuff I want to talk to you about. Not the least of which is the short story that you sent me in advance of this conversation, Dogwood. And we were talking about it a little bit off the pod. Just that I enjoyed it so much, and that it was an insight into what I wonder are a few themes that run through your work, maybe beyond this story. And then when you were talking about your novel that's coming in the future, but has already been at least one draft in, you were just describing it. I'm like, I think there is a little bit of a through line here. So we can get into that, but
right.
Mostly I just wanted to talk to you maybe as a way in to what it was that kind of made you decide that maybe this writing life was for you after all.
That is a really good question. I wish I could pinpoint the moment. I think it happened kind of gradually over layers. I think when, I was maybe in middle school or high school, I was always journaling. I was always writing in a notebook and collaging and writing really bad poems and just,
can relate.
Yeah. I got some of those notebooks from my dad's house the other day when we were back in Japan, and I could not even bear to read a full page of it. It was so cringy. But I have so many notebooks from that time that I just filled cover to cover. So I think there was always an element of, writing just was always an outlet for me for just what I was going through or expressing something. But I didn't really consider writing as something that I would share beyond that, for a very long time. Writing used to be a very private thing for me. And, in college, I was a philosophy major. I thought I would be an academic and be kind of, buried in books in a very different kind of way, just reading a lot of Foucault and Kafka. And it wasn't until, my 20s, I think my early 20s, that I, maybe out of realizing I didn't quite want to be an academic, that I wanted to explore the same kind of things, but creatively. And so during my senior year, I kind of decided to turn what was supposed to be a philosophy thesis basically into a novel. That's kind of how I turned it around at the last minute. And I had a really great mentor who really encouraged me to, keep pushing on that. And I kept saying, I'm not really a writer, though. I'm not an English major. I'm not a creative writing, I don't know. I haven't read enough or I haven't done enough. And she was kind of that doesn't matter. You just either do it or you don't. And so, very luckily, I got into an MFA program, much with her help, really. But I really felt like I was faking it for a long time. Even in that program, I was surrounded by people who were saying that they've been writers their whole lives, who, they've read so many more books than I have and analyzed them. And, maybe they've even written or published books. And here I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. That's why I'm here to learn. So I think I've been in that kind of, space for a while now, even up until recently, honestly, just feeling like I wasn't a real writer because I haven't officially published a book yet. But I think it's that's definitely changed over the last few years.
You're feeling like you've come into your own, or more so.
Yeah, or maybe it's that, the way that we think of writers or a writer's life, I think for me used to be a very narrow thing. And I've been able to expand that a little bit and to own the fact that, I am writing and I am creating something that even if it's not like a best-selling book or,
Sure.
even if it's not in the form that I thought it would be at the stage that I am now, that I can still call myself a writer because I write. And but that wasn't something that I could have admitted, back then.
Yeah, you needed some outside thing or an accolade or a physical object or a more. You've been published multiple times, and so it's not like your record is short of applause.
No, I think that's also. I was talking to my other friend who is, a multiply published writer, and she was telling me you don't need to keep collecting like gold stars.
Yeah.
It feels like.
It feels like you do, though.
Thank you, but it also.
I think it just generally to creative people, they feel like life is an endless search for gold stars.
I know, right?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh,
Continue.
no. But I think that's so it's maybe it feels easier to try to get those little stars and build on them, even though what you might see is like that I've published in XYZ, but what you don't see is that I've been rejected from 200 places and I've cried over them, and
Sure.
I've and those little wins, maybe they're not even that little, some of them, but there's a lot that's not there that is still part of that writing process. So.
All the rejections that people don't see are there. It's funny like this.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's fair for me to posit a hypothesis in that reading your bio just on your website, and then reading this short piece that I read, and then just talking to you a little bit about your writing experience thus far. Is it fair to say that you've kind of felt like on the outside looking in, whether it's like a Japanese American in America or American in Japan, and then with the writing thing, the character in Dogwood kind of describes that feeling, and we can get into that story specifically, but I'll put that question to you for now.
Oh yeah, I feel like having grown up in in the middle of these two cultures, just to put a little context to it, I was born in Tokyo, but because of my dad's work, he worked in the medical field. I lived in San Diego for a few years when I was a toddler. I don't really remember those years, but when we went back to Japan and I was in kindergarten, apparently they put us in some English class, and I had, no accent when I was singing the ABCs or whatnot. And all the kids were like, "Oh, you're not really Japanese, are you?" And my father being ethnically Korean too, those Japanese kids were really brutal about it. They were like, "You're not really
Even
from
in America,
here."
the Japanese American.
Oh no,
is that what you're saying?
In Japan, sorry, that was confusing. But in Japan, people notice kind of right away when your name is not Japanese.
Yes.
And my maiden name is Ko. And so in Japan, they would, the kids would immediately notice the fact that I spoke English pretty well, and that I had a foreign last name. And so I was never quite accepted into that kind of, even in an elementary school, setting.
And is it true what they say that culturally the Japanese are a little more not xenophobic is maybe an overstatement, maybe not, I don't know, but they're really you're Japanese or you're not?
There's a lot of that for sure. I think I don't want to oversimplify it. It is
Sure.
a very depending on maybe who you're talking to or which part of Japan you're in, or even today, I feel like things are a lot more progressive and inclusive now than when I was growing up there in the 90s. But just linguistically, even the Japanese word for wrong and different are the same word. So, it's
that's a tell.
Yeah, it is. And so I think there is that tendency in the culture to not want to be different because being different is wrong. So you do want to, I don't want to say assimilate, but there is this safety in feeling accepted because you sound the same, because you have a similar last name, because you wear the same uniform. Like there's a safety to that that I don't think just by nature of being ethnically different or having grown up a little bit outside of Japan. And so in any case, I would end up going back to California when I was in 3rd grade. And they put me in a public school in Palo Alto. And
Your folks moved?
Yep, we moved again. And that was probably when I was 8 years old. And by this point, my English was actually not quite good anymore, because I was in a Japanese school right before that. So they put me in an ESL program. And I remember like sarcasm was not in my understanding of the world at that time. And the kids in California would be like saying all these things sarcastically, but I would only interpret it literally, And so I was like always feeling like I don't understand what anyone's saying. And so it took a while to kind of, get used to that. And anyway, some of those friends ended up being great, and I'm still really close with one of them. But like just going back and forth between those two cultures, definitely, I feel like, for a lot of my childhood, I always felt like I wasn't quite, in a place that I belonged. Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. If I might insert myself into that theme for a moment,
please.
in my own funny way, because I'm just like a white guy from a white part of the country. But within that little microcosm of Southern Idaho, I basically grew up in the potato patch. I grew up in a family of evangelical Christians in an area of the world that was very predominantly Mormon. And my parents were being not extreme versions of evangelical Christian, but they were like serious about it, And their basic fear I felt growing up was that the Mormons would get me, to put it bluntly. And so, like, for that reason, I wasn't allowed to be a Boy Scout. Would be an example of that, which the Boy Scouts were a thing until not too long ago. But and that was like, so I'd have these friends that I grew up with, and they'd go on these fun trips on the weekends and stuff, and I never got to go. And so there was, and also like it manifested itself in a zillion ways throughout my childhood. I lived in the same town until I was 18. Like, all the cute girls at school were all Mormon. All the kids in high school would go to this, they call it 0 hour or something. It was like an educated class that you went to. Anyway, it was just like a whole culture within a culture. And in a way, I was very much on the outside looking in. Like all the kids in my class were like that. It's just interesting. And I have felt my version of that throughout my own life, even living here. I like moved here to be a musician and have made music this whole time, while simultaneously, and this is 20 years deep, feeling like very much on the outside of the music community in some way. And I don't know if that's like my thing, if I have just imposed, like projected this alienation that doesn't exist, or whether it actually does. It's really an interesting, complicated issue.
Yes. But I also feel like that's such good, like, raw material for an artist,
Alienation,
not just,
it's great.
It's juicy.
I'm so misunderstood.
And I feel like, and now this is starting to feel a little bit like a therapy session.
No, this is,
but,
let's go.
Okay.
That's a big part of this podcast.
I think, because of that feeling of, in the day-to-day kind of walkthrough of life, not fitting in wherever I was, I think that notebook felt like the place where I could kind of be whoever, and I think there is that, if there was no safety net in the kind of social circles, and I definitely felt that safety at home, like my parents were incredibly encouraging, and they gave me, a lot of great influences. And when I said I wanted to be a writer, they were like, yeah, go for it. They were not the typical kind of tiger parents, they really wanted me to embrace my passions. But and outside of
I want
that,
to
it
put a
was
pin in
hard.
that.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
want to
yeah.
come back to that because I just think
Yeah.
that's a really interesting exception to what you described earlier about kind of like the Japanese culture or persona
yeah.
of like fitting in and blending in. And so like, that's interesting that your parents were like broke from that somehow.
Totally. They were weirdos.
Yeah.
They didn't fit in Japan either, and I think they found a lot of liberation every time they came to California.
And were they both Korean, like
No,
born
just
Korean?
just my dad. Actually, he wasn't even born in Korea. He was born in Japan, but because of the way the immigration law works there, if you're not Japanese by blood, you're not Japanese.
Yeah.
So here it's like if you're born in America, like my sons, they're both born here. They're American because you're in. That's not quite the case in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
No. What were we saying?
Oh man! So the notebooks were a refuge.
Yeah. And well, and also my parents being kind of like outsiders too. I think they found, they had their own little outlets too for like expressing their weirdness, and with my mom it was always like music or like little hobbies that she had, like a million hobbies, but she would just, I don't know, always be finding some way to like break out of the traditional housewife kind of role or the expectations of like a good wife or a mother. Like she kind of, she had the most impractical cars. She would like
what kind of car?
Oh my gosh. Like I think I was like a teenager and she got herself this car that could only seat two, even though we were a family of three. And it was one of those convertibles. And she was like, yeah, it looks cool. That's why I want to drive it. She had this kind of impracticality about her that was also so inspiring.
A bit of whimsy.
Oh my gosh. Yes. But, the notebook felt like the safe space for me to, just kind of keep experimenting with things. And so I think that definitely fed into what I do now, like decades later,
I'm so interested in this as somebody who also is a lifelong journaler.
I've noticed that in your Instagram and stuff.
Yeah. No, it's very much a part of my daily experience. And it's something that there was a long time in my life where it was just like absolutely every day was started that way. And then as I got more, this is ironically like more serious about writing and also was kind of juggling daily life as you do, was like, I don't have time. Like that's time I could spend. I felt like in a way I was like shoegazing, I was just like all my like feelings, trying to understand myself in the world. And then at the end of the day, it was just like, it all went into this vault that no one would ever see. And I was just like, I don't have the luxury of the vault anymore. And so I would stop doing it and then come back to it. But it's just really interesting because like this morning, I'm going through some stuff right now. And so with that comes this like, it's like a need to go like, what is going on here? I feel like the world is like my own little world is too wild. And I was like, sitting down and putting whatever thoughts in an environment that is so highly permissive, I know that no one's going to see this. It's just for me. And with that, it was just amazing how helpful that was, those 10 minutes and just like a page. And I was like, oh, that is how I feel. That's the thing is I would just like, I don't really know that I love the writing while I'm doing it. But I also don't notice anything else in the world when I am writing. And then at the end of it, I noticed that like, oh, the world just got a little bit more understandable to me, unto me. You know what I mean? And so I marvel at people who don't journal in a way, like writers who don't. But I can't understand them because like for me, I have to have some like permissive is the word that I use. I'm just like, I can barely do it if I think I'm, it's going to be seen or something. I just can't even take the chance in a weird way. It's so paralyzing. But if I'm like, no one's going to see this, it doesn't matter. It's just for fun. That is like an environment I can operate in.
Yeah.
And then can trick myself from that to making something that I might share. I don't know if that
So do you
resonates.
use those to, I don't know, put into a fictional work afterwards or no?
I mean, what's weird is that no, generally, but I noticed that there's a spirit of play that indirectly absolutely goes into the other things that I do. And then there are exceptions, because there's like, as soon as you said that, I'm like, there is this one story. I remember like in 2012, I was so unhappy about whatever. And so I was just like losing myself in my journal. Yeah. And then I was just like, I'm so sick of writing about myself. Let me just write about something. And I wrote this, I mean, like 5-page little fictitious story about this hodgepodge collection of animals that were in a hot air balloon flying through the fog. And it was like suddenly so fun. And I'm holding on to that story.
Yeah.
That's going to be something someday.
Yeah.
And I don't really know. And the only reason I know it will be is because I remember it 10 years later. It's still like kicking around in there, like waiting for it. And I've played with it a little bit since, but there's an example. But I don't think that, and this is for you, I'm talking too much. I don't think that for me, typically the journal exercises are a way to explore my imagination. It's more of a way to understand the world around me.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's why they don't always find themselves into writing meant for consumption.
That's interesting. For me, I have that writing that's just for me, but then I discovered in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, and I think the pandemic definitely had a big part to do with this, that I also wrote very freely when I was writing to my friends. And I have a group of we're a group of 5 women. We went to grad school together, and we're all kind of scattered. A lot of them are in Brooklyn still, but we kept in touch mostly with, text or, sometimes Zoom check-ins if it wasn't, too awkward, but we, write long emails to each other. And there's a couple of them that we write longhand letters to each other. And, we're all writers in different ways too. So I think for us, writing letters to each other is also part of our practice in a way. Mm-hmm. And with emails, what's nice is that you can see what you sent, right? As opposed to the longhand, unless you take a picture of it or something. But I remember I was going through a lot of stuff at one point, and I was writing these long emails that I would carefully craft and I would like treat it very preciously, like I was publishing it, but it was only for my friends. Mm-hmm. And I would write these emails and send them. And, months later, I would go back, and I actually took a lot of those paragraphs as raw material to write a lot of my novel. Mm-hmm. And just to get into like the raw emotion of what I was going through and what I wanted my character to go through. And she wasn't writing to her friends. It's just, the writing that came out of that space became like this the starting point. And a lot of that's changed, through revisions. Sure. But I remember thinking that, it felt like a step away from journaling for myself. It was like I was writing for an audience, like a small audience, but I was using that to then try to make it into something that would be for an even wider audience, for people I don't even know. And that's been tremendously helpful for my process.
And you didn't know that you were doing that when you were
doing it.
Yes.
I wasn't like, but at the same time, because we're all writers, I think, there's one writer in our group. I know that she's definitely done this, with like months later, I would see her publish an essay or a story that would sound familiar. And the writer, group text chain is like, wait, did you read what she just published? Isn't that kind of what we were talking about? Or like, isn't that? And I think there's an element of that trust or that, that understanding that as writers, that's kind of what we're going to do. So, and I also let my friends know I'm going to use parts of this, to start off this big project. And they've read, multiple drafts of this too. So it's not like going to be a surprise when they read it, but yeah.
Do you read a lot, like fiction?
I do. I but not as much as I would probably like. I'm a very slow reader.
Me too.
So I have a huge stack of books, and I'm almost always reading multiple books at the same time. And so they're kind of like progressing, little by little. I don't finish a whole book and then start another. It's like I'm always, grabbing whatever is most interesting to me, like that night or something. And then the next night I might start off, where I left with another book. So it's kind of chaotic.
Yeah, I feel like that's a common thing.
Is it? Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I think more people do that than don't.
Okay.
I try not to do that, though I will. I don't know why I try not to do it also. I'm like, why just don't. I think I have some kind of not fixation. I have some sort of like constant battle of chaos by just sort of staying somewhat organized. I feel like my life is constantly like unwieldy and spooling out, as maybe all of ours are.
Yeah.
But I'm also just like I have a couple of other interests, I'm trying to do at all times, and that I notice. Okay, this is a ramble, but this next part is going to be a ramble. The ramble hopefully is done. Is that I have this idea that if you're a creative person, your ability to get stuff done is really limited by your ability to stay organized, and I feel that intensely. And so how that translates into books is I'm just like, nope, you have one book. It's like a little bit of a discipline. Like you have to finish your book, Corby, before you can. And but I will depart. Like I'm reading this Karl Nausgaard. Do you know that guy?
Yes, My Struggle. Which one?
My Struggle.
Yeah, what are you reading?
Book 6. I'm almost done.
Good for you.
And,
Not a lot of people get that far.
It's crazy. And I'm like, weirdly, it's been almost effortless because I just like it so much.
Oh, I love him too.
In a strange, yeah, that's so interesting.
But I have not gotten to book 6.
I mean, book 6 is a different book than the other one. I mean, it has a lot of the same kind of long descriptions of his quotidian life with his family that are just fun and engrossing and very Karlov. But the middle section of this book, which I'm in right now, I mean, it's dense. There's probably a 300-page section of literary criticism on like his claim. He kind of begins it by saying like he just doesn't feel like he understands poetry, and he can't understand poetry, and he wishes that he could understand poetry. And then he's like, for example, here's this poem by Paul Cézanne, and then it's like the first line, I, and then it's like what I could refer to.
Yeah.
And then it goes into a long history of the biography of Hitler. And I think that was sort of inevitable. I wonder if he was thinking of that when he started this book because of the title and like the obvious like purposeful comparison to Mein Kampf. Anyway, but yeah, so I got to that part and I was just like, man, I only let myself read for 20 minutes a day, like really first thing in the morning. I'm like, I got to do something a little lighter here. So I will take departures. But I do try to have, I find that I read very widely, and I like highbrow stuff that's hard, and I also like really fun, easy stuff.
Yeah.
And I try to oscillate one to the other, just because it's just fun. I think you learn a lot from a romp, a good old like book romp. Like something that's just fun to read, like that clip. And I tend to be, I think, more ponderous, just both in my personality and my writing. And so I need a little fun.
Yeah.
How do you? When you're a mother of two,
yes,
and a wife and an educator, and you have all of these hats, and you live on planet Earth in this busy world that we are all part of, how do you find time? Do you have a rhythm for writing, or how does that look for you?
I wish I had a really great answer to this, and I don't. Like I think in the way my life is structured right now, it's like I'm. I wake up and it's all just like structured around kids. Mm-hmm. It's just, let's make their lunches, let's fill their water bottles, let's get them dressed, brush their teeth, off they go. Okay, like now my day has started, but I have a full-time job, which I love. Mm-hmm. And I'm working with other writers and other educators. So I at least get to be in the space and have the kind of dialogue that I think is directly tied to the art that I'm making for myself. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't feel entirely separate, which is nice. Mm-hmm. But I do the job. It's a lot of emails. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of Excel sheets, and then it's time to pick up the kids. It's time to make dinner. Mm-hmm. It's time to put them to bed. And then, my writing definitely goes in like the back end of my to-do list, almost always. Mm-hmm. But I do, I have been very privileged to be able to go to these writing residencies the last couple of years where I get to do a lot of just writing in a very concentrated spurt of time. And then I think I do a kind of mix of like whenever I get those moments when can be away from the chaos of family life and work and just focus on writing for, even if it's just a week, I can come back and look at this big thing that I worked on and keep revising it in smaller spurts that, like I think I can't really be too consistent with my writing process. Like it all kind of has to be like a bunch at once and then kind of sprinkle it in the writing a little bit and then do a lot of it again. Sometimes I'm just like, it's also a balance, right? Like I either prioritize sleep and like, my own entertainment at night, or I, drink another caffeinated drink at 9 p.m. and stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning writing and be miserable the next day. Yeah. So like it always just feels like a trade-off. But I think at the same time, I've always been the kind of writer that, I think I can't just be given like infinite time to, like, I can't just be like, if someone were to say, okay, like we'll take care of your kids, we'll take care of the house and all that, like just write for as long as you need, I think I would go crazy. I think I need a little bit of that other stuff in order to maybe even make that writing time feel a little bit more precious and, not in a way that gives me like pressure, but I think it kind of having the limit on that almost does away with like the self-doubt that can creep in when there's too much time involved,
I remember Karl Ove talked about that in one of the books about how he didn't have time for self-doubt because he only had this, like he too was raising a family during the whole my struggle. And so it's just like, I got 4 hours or whatever it was. And I love that word precious that you just used to describe, this time that you might have to write. And I think the power of that feeling is pretty considerable. And I say this as somebody who is on the precipice of jumping into family life. I've been married for a few years. And so there's some structure there, which I've really, honestly, has been incredible for me as a person who seems like in absence of external boundaries, just completely fall. Like I have everything just turns to mush around me. If my wife is gone for a few days, immediately the dishes in the sink are not washed, the bed's not made. Because I'm just like, why bother? There's no like self-imposed reason to maintain these appearances or otherwise. But with our daughter, who's going to be born December 8th, which is probably going to be a month or less after this airs. Obviously, this is going to be a major change, and I wonder, without trepidation, how that's going to affect my time, because I do have a bit of time in the morning. It's and that's, we'll see.
Can I just say something about that?
Yes, please.
So
I hope it's a good advice. That's what I'm hoping
I mean,
for.
I really don't have advice. I just I want to share something that I hope might help a little bit, just because I remember, like, I was really good at school. Like I could read, I could do tests, I could kind of check off boxes. And I remember when I got pregnant, I was like, I'm going to ace this thing. Like I'm going to read all the baby books. I'm going to get all the stuff and I'm going to be ready. And then parenthood happened and it kind of threw that out the window. Like I had to be okay with not knowing, and I was prepared and yet unprepared. And I felt like, I have to do all these things before the baby comes. And then, feeling really pressured by that too. But I remember like, in the chaos of that early stage of parenting and, postpartum and just like everything feeling really fuzzy and uncertain, I found a bit of that, like, I don't know, I found myself changing a little bit of that perfectionist stance on things in a way that I think benefited me as a person. Like I think I was pretty insufferable. Maybe I still am, but like in that notion that you could study for something and that you're set. I think there is that kind of academic mentality that is instilled when you go through a school system like that. But I think in life, in parenthood, there could be so many things that you have to kind of figure out on the spot, or like you might be doing something wrong, by the book, but then it works. And so you kind of have to be okay with like trusting your instincts with some things, or like, for example, like my son did not sleep very well, and he really didn't sleep well in the bassinet. And so we ended up just kind of carrying him, or like he would fall asleep on me. And I would think, I'm failing because all these books say that we have to like sleep train. But, like at the end of the day, it was like, we're just going to do what works for us. And I don't necessarily mind holding a baby if that means he's going to sleep. So it's like, of course, there were worries that, is he going to be too attached to me, or are we messing him up already by doing this? No.
He's fine.
Yeah.
And
so I think there is like a kind of beauty that comes from not knowing, And I also, the other thing I wanted to say was that I think my writing life just kind of, I think it started after I became a parent in a weird way. Like I've been writing for a long time, but it was only after losing that personal time, like we were talking about, like having to carve out time out of necessity, that some of the writing that I'm most proud of, I made in, after kids. So like, before having the kids, I think I would have thought to myself, like, I need to do my best writing before this happens, because this is time for me. But I think I kind of, I want to encourage like other parents to kind of be okay with like, not pressuring yourself too much to get things done before, or to let things happen afterwards. And I hope that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
It's very encouraging. And I mean, I can only imagine that life is richer with kids, just because it's just more complicated. And
it is.
You're seeing the world anew through young eyes, which is one of the things that when I think about parenthood that I'm most excited about. I'm 48 and I've had so much fun in life, way too much. And I've also, I've spent a lot of my time in ways that to me were, fulfilling and hopefully will have lasting impact. Just reading alone, just reading great literature. I don't think that you can do this. To me, I think that's no better way to spend your time. Okay, kids, that's my soapbox. But I just like Christmas is just Christmas. I've traveled. I've been fortunate to travel a lot, and when I'm traveling by myself, I'm like, oh, yeah, here I am. This is something new. But being able to do it with a brand new person who's just like, it's Christmas.
Yeah.
Like I cannot wait. So I'm really excited about that. But the other part of it is that I'm, I wouldn't even say I'm deeply afraid of this, but if there is a fear there around it, it is like, well, will I have time to do it? And then there's another fear underneath that that's like, will I care? Like, oh my God, what if I just don't care about writing anymore? What if I don't have this like weird need to express myself through writing and song? What then will I be? How will I make money? Well, that's where my mind goes.
But also, though, speaking of like reading great literature and stuff, that will come back. Like it might, for the first few years with a baby, you might have to read a lot of The Hungry, Hungry Caterpillar, or, like you might have to go through books that are pleasant and cute and educational that aren't quite tickling that like literature brain. But it like my older son who's 6 is starting to read by himself now. And we're doing audiobooks together. We're doing like graphic novels and chapter books. And I'm like, I get excited, with him because he's discovering this whole world of books. And I'm finally like, oh my gosh, now you're entering this world. Yes. Yeah. And so I feel like, it might not happen right away. Like, I think it, you never know how it's going to show back up again,
Totally.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And
So.
I'm sure. And I also was a kid that took to reading at a very young age and just loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how I spent my childhood. And so I look forward. I remember so many of those books that just lit me on fire when I was, 8 and 9, like all the Beverly Cleary books. I don't know if people are still reading Beverly Cleary, but I hope they are.
Yeah.
And like Roald Dahl, I know he's kind of a mixed character now, but I loved the books.
Yeah.
And there was a series, The Great Brain, that I remember my 5th grade teacher read to the class, and I loved those books. Anyway, so I was just like, I can't wait to share some of those things with the kids, and also like, be curious about what they're curious about. It's just it's a very exciting time.
Yes.
It seems to me that you're like a pretty well-adjusted person, and you're like you're sort of largely at peace with your your many hats, your limited time, your ability to write, your inability to get to it as much as you could. Like, is it fair to say, or is there a secret swirling cauldron in there?
There might be. No, I laugh, and it's funny because, I think, and this is one of the things I actually write about a lot in my work, especially after moving to Nashville. But despite the fact that I don't feel quite Japanese, there is one part of me that I think is still very much ingrained in me, and it's this Japanese notion of having like this outer front-facing appearance and then what's really going on inside. And this is something that I think Southerners have too, right? Like, they have their hospitality and their politeness and their smiles, and then once you really get to know them, it's like there's something else there. And I don't think it's necessarily an act of deception. It's just kind of how we feel comfortable in these cultures, I could go down a whole, rabbit hole with that. No, but I feel like maybe, what you just described is just the fact that, maybe I'm doing a good job of putting up that appearance of, but inside, and, when I'm at home late at night trying to wrangle this manuscript and all these ideas that I have, I'm kind of messy. And the whole, process is very messy, but I don't necessarily like to maybe show that, on the outside. And as a writing teacher, though, I do encourage all of my students to write messily and to do lots of rough drafts and to embrace that. But, and I just want to put it out there, like I'm constantly like feeling like I'm still not a real writer, or like that I'm still working on the craft, and that every time I write something that even gets published, I'll read it afterwards and be like, dang it, like I wish I had one more go around with this.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of that self-doubt that swirls around. So there is that. I like that, the cauldron. It's definitely there.
Okay, I am thusly reassured.
Okay.
I think that's really helpful, and to hear you describe that. And I notice this is I have some of the same, I'm going to say, call it, for the word I would use to describe myself, reservations to share. I just don't want to burden people with my bullshit, to just put it, really bluntly, in a world of like, and I've been fortunate in many ways and am fortunate, and but inside I just am like, I'm such a mess, and I don't know, the cauldron is like broken in there or something, and especially when it comes to writing, and there's a part of me that's just like, I do feel like it's the hardest possible thing to do.
It really is, because you are putting so much of you on the page, and then that, if it's out there, whoever, can pick it up and read it and kind of get to know these like very deep secret parts of you without really knowing you. So that is a very scary thing. It's a very vulnerable thing,
okay,
right?
This is an interesting take on that, because I have none of those reservations. I don't care about that at all.
Okay.
Like I have a little book here that came out, and it's so personal, and it's been read, whatever. It's people write me occasionally. We're like, that story and and that I'm just glad that they found some utility in it and some entertainment. What I struggle with is just, I want it to be so good. And, it's like so dumb. It's such a bad idea to read Tolstoy, because guess what? You're not going to be Tolstoy. He's like, you're not. But when you see like writing that's breathtaking, and you not only you see it, you read it, but you're affected in a really deep way by that writing. It's hard, like, oh, that's the game. That's the bar. And to want to aim there, that's where I just get so down on myself, because I'll have, I have like a weekly I have a standing gig. I post an essay or a short story on Substack every Sunday. This week it was a couple days late, but every week. And it just like you said, you always look at something even after you post it or it's published and be like, I wish I had another pass at that.
Yeah.
And I am constantly humiliating myself week after week after week in that way of just like, but I'm within almost every one of those little efforts is maybe one sentence where I'm like, yeah.
But that's a
that's
win.
all I've got.
Yeah.
But I also have to remember that no one cares. Like, no one's thinking about me when I'm not there, and that I find encouragement that way. But it's just really interesting because we all do have problems with expressing ourselves, but they kind of come from different corners in a way.
I have to say, though, if there's one sentence you love, in that newsletter that I think that's a huge win, like writing one. And I know Tolstoy, like I get that when you read the greats, feeling like it's kind of an unattainable, but I don't know. I feel like I just wonder, like, if we could go back and interview them, how they would feel. I bet they would kind of say the same thing.
Oh my God, no, he was.
Right?
I'm a weird Tolstoy fan. Like, I've read all the novels, but there's only two, but I read the short novels too, and then I read the long, diaries of Tolstoy, and then I was like, I'm so interested in, like, his family life was so fraught. He basically, like, died alone on a train to escape from his wife when he was 80 because they were just so at each other's throats, and they had been kind of throughout their whole marriage. And so I read the diaries of his wife, and, like, it was, they had children die and everything, and I mean, it was a consistent feature of his writing that he would just constantly lived in fear of his own personal humiliation. He was just like, he would publish a thing and just be like, I cannot believe, like, I'm going to be found out. He had imposter syndrome his whole life.
Yeah.
So that's an encouragement.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think that this is a question, and
Okay.
however you want to answer this, what do you think you're best at, like, in your voice? Like, what is it that you think, if you were to grade yourself?
Oh my gosh.
I know this is an uncomfortable question.
Like, in my writing?
Yeah.
What am I best at? Oh.
Like, what do you think it is that you, like, a thing, not the thing, just a thing that you think it is that you bring to the table?
I guess one thing that maybe I'm actively working on, pretty much with whatever I like to write, I try to do this thing in the writing where, and I like to think kind of multidisciplinary ways. Like, I like to think of, if the story has, like, a lens, like a camera lens, and I guess this could speak to you because you're also a filmmaker, but I think I like in the prose when I get to zoom in really close on something and then zoom way out and play with that distance a little bit. So, let's say that I'm describing, even if it's a scene that might seem really mundane, like maybe someone's making breakfast, I like to zoom in on, how does that kettle feel when they're picking it up, or, like, just kind of these little details that might stand out to that character, just sensory details or things that are really particular. I recently workshopped the story that you read, Dogwood, and my writer friends, one of the things they pointed out was they liked a detail that I had about the father and son drinking from a water bottle that's been sitting in a car for a couple days. And they were like, they love that detail just because of the specificity of that, like, lukewarm water that's just been sitting there.
I totally remember that line and thinking the same thing
in
the way, because it was also familiar. We all have that water bottle that's behind the driver's seat that's just been there for a month.
And it's kind of gross, but you kind of have to do with it. So I think I try to find these moments that maybe don't feel necessary, to the story or at all, but to me feels like an exciting moment where the writer can kind of choose to go in deep into something and then kind of split back out to, a more general landscape, or, like, back to the real story or whatnot. But I really I love those little zooming in moments. So yeah.
And what is there a book or an author that you kind of resonate with or have in the past that kind of made you go, like, oh man, that is so great? Or,
Yes.
I mentioned Tolstoy for me, but there's others. But what about you?
There's, like, a few authors that I like to go to. And the one that I'm going to talk about with you, I'm going to choose just because maybe he's, like, not as well known. He's an essayist and memoirist named Richard Rodriguez, and he is by far one of my all-time favorite writers. And he has this essay called The Late Victorians. And it was published in 1990 in the midst of the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco. And he was living in San Francisco at the time. And he wrote this beautiful essay where he's talking about the Victorian houses in San Francisco. And some of the fragments, they're just like architectural. It's kind of like Carl Ove, actually, so you might like it. It's like sometimes he'll go into these architectural histories or, things that feel a little bit tangential. But then, the prose, it definitely does that thing that I just talked about where he'll like zoom in on a very specific thing. And then even as a reader, you don't quite know why he's putting attention to it. But then maybe a few paragraphs later, it kind of comes back into focus in a new way. And it becomes this light bulb moment of like all these things coming together. And the essay becomes this, it's essentially a beautiful eulogy for a friend that he lost. But he can't even bring himself to say it because he's still so much in his grief. And to me, that feels like such a great representation of what real grief feels like. Like you can't even really like bring yourself to say the words, but you find other ways to do it. And then the reader kind of, connects the dots together. And then that effect is just so much more powerful, through that. So.
You hinted that feeling in Dogwood.
Thank you.
Yeah. When the friends come to visit the dad and they talk around it, and the dad notices that. And that's, kind of an oblique way of acknowledging something, not exactly the same, but similar.
Yeah.
I wrote that down. Is he still working today, Richard Rodriguez?
Yes. And I actually, it's funny, like, so I read this essay, I loved it, and I even taught it when I was teaching undergrads. And, we dissected it and everything. And the writer happened to come, to New York where we were living, like, for another event. So I was like, students, let's go. Like, let's go to this event. Let's, like, meet him. And we went up to him afterwards and we're like, we studied your essay. And he was like, oh, yeah, that was like a long time ago. Thank you. And, my students had all these questions, like, what did you mean when you said this? Or like, how did you draft that? He's like, oh, I don't really know. Like, for him, it was just this distant memory.
A story from a long time ago.
And he was he was really happy to, engage with us. But that was also a great moment, like writer to like to see that maybe he, I like to think that he put a lot of thought into that. But maybe for him, it came very naturally. I don't know. Like we put a lot of meaning into what he wrote and how he wrote it. And when he was reminiscing about it, he was kind of like, yeah, like, I'm so glad you like that, but I don't really remember the exact moment you're talking about.
The emotional context kind of like faded and lost.
Yeah.
I mean, it was in his defense, 2+ decades prior.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
I want to ask you, just with our limited time remaining,
sure.
In your capacity as the educational director at the Porch,
yes.
You're responsible for shaping the lives of many of the creative minds here in Nashville.
Don't put that pressure on me. No.
But no, I don't.
I'm not solely responsible.
Mostly, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about something you're excited about coming up.
Yes. So, no, I'm so grateful for this chance to talk about the Porch. I started working there as a writing teacher first and foremost, and have stepped into the role of director last year. And it's been so fun working basically with my friends and colleagues, that I've worked alongside with for many years. But, it's kind of fun being on the other side of things administratively and thinking about the balance between what the students and the writers in general of the city are looking for right now, and what our teachers are wanting to teach and what they're itching to do in their own classrooms. And it's always this interesting balancing act. I have noticed, in the past few seasons that there's been a huge surge of writers in these genres that like romance or sci-fi or thrillers. And I think for a long time, the literary world kind of had their door closed. Like, oh, like that's like genre writing. That's not serious. But I think that's starting to change a little bit in the publishing world, but also among the writer circles. So we've started to do a lot of classes on like romance writing and, how to write a good psychopath in your thriller. And like those classes have done really well. So I think we're going to keep making these spaces where those writers can commune and work together. We also have a lot of classes on, that have been beloved at the Porch, like our foundations of fiction or nonfiction or memoir writing. The personal essay is always kind of, there's always been a demand for that, I think, just because the essay has so many different forms it can take, and everybody has a story that can be compressed into that form one way or another. I've personally loved teaching the essay class myself. But what we have coming up that's new is we're going to start a 6-month fiction cohort, where this is the longest class that we, are going to run ever. Like our longest class before used to be 8 weeks long, but now it's going to be, any fiction writer working on something that wants that accountability and that community over a period of 6 months, and maybe work towards a manuscript or even a part of it. Like they can be in that group and be guided by a teacher who's going to, look over multiple drafts with you. And so we're going to start that in January.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Who's teaching?
So we have one in person here in Nashville that's going to be facilitated by an instructor named Clementine Girado, and then one on Zoom online taught by a writer who used to live in Nashville, now lives in Colorado, named Loie Rodding. Okay. Yeah, so there'll be options either whether or not you're in town or, outside.
And as of this airing, which will be, like I said, probably mid-November, has the class started, or are there still openings?
Oh, yes. We have classes going on until mid-December. And aside from a lot of the, 1-day or 4-week classes, we also have various meetups for different community groups. So that usually happens on a Sunday, like a free meetup group for the Black storytellers, the Asian American writers, which I am a part of. There's the LGBTQ plus writers, writers over 40, writers in their 20s and 30s, and parent writers. So all of those groups are meeting regularly at the Porch, and they're going to meet up until, the holiday season, and we'll come back again in January. So I really hope people will keep coming to those.
I mean, the Porch as an institution has grown by leaps and bounds since Katie and Susanna started it. So
it really has, yeah.
It's really an exciting testament both to their prowess as leaders and builders, and their ability to find talent and rope it into their cause.
It's been fun. It's been a really great, gig, and I'm just really like sending emails between people to make things happen.
Well, that's a huge part of making the world go round.
Yes, lots of emails.
Yes, and I just want to maybe draw a parallel in the sense that I feel like one of the things that the Porch has accomplished is answering a desire in the community that the community didn't even know it had. In a way, like word got out, you can go, somebody went and took the personal essay class, and they came in and they told their friend, man, this was so great. I learned a little bit of something about myself. I was able to put into words some feelings that I've been carrying around for 5 decades and never put, and then somebody else goes to it. And that's like, it's so exciting. And, in some small way, that's really like what I'm trying to do with the podcast is kind of create a community of people who have some connection to their own personal creativity, which to me is everyone. Yes. And, I think that this part of culture that I have been, experienced firsthand and in some ways participated in, peripherally at the very least, is this like idea of the professional and the amateur, this idea of like The Voice, where you go on TV and you have a moment and a judge, and the judges pick you or they don't. And now if you're anointed, you're an artist, and everybody else is just like a teacher and in fact, like my experience has been that we all have this connection to creativity, and it's something that, can be a part of everybody's life every day, or to whatever extent they want it to be on whatever level. And it's a very personal thing. To me, it's like a very spiritual thing. And, in the sense that we're all on our own journey, I love talking with people who are on their own journeys. And I find it encourages me on my own. And hopefully that, my own exploration, like helps encourage somebody else to find their story.
Yes.
And, in some ways, it also gets at, and then I'm done with my soapbox, is that this trying to find something universal in the human experience, I think, is at a premium in our day and age. And I think that creative effort gets at that in some way that's helpful.
Yeah, and I think writing is such a nuanced art form, especially in kind of the long form, even if it's a 20-page short story or, longer like a book. You have that space to get into the complexity of that experience. We're not writing one sentence headlines and tweets or, which I feel like is kind of our instinct these days, is to wrap everything up neatly into this contained short thing. But I think so much of life needs more to get into that,
I mean, nuance requires time.
Exactly. And I think writing allows that space, so.
Absolutely. And unlike some other efforts, which maybe have more formal restrictions, and granted, there's a bazillion forms within the writing milieu, there are a zillion ways to write, and that permissiveness is my favorite word, is so helpful, I think. And like, everybody has a way into this thing, and it's also so basic to, like, can you say a sentence?
Yes.
Okay, you have a shot at writing. Yurina, thank you so much for your time.
You,
this has
Corby.
been great. I feel like we could talk for 2 hours.
I agree. This has been so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll do it again soon, and look for me in one of the classes at the Porch coming up.
Absolutely. Yes.
Cheers.
The Morse Code podcast is produced by Corby Linker and Jared Hammond in East Nashville, Tennessee. Our executive producer is Randa Newman. You can find full videos for this and all previous episodes at morsecodepodcast.com.